Hello and welcome to Champ Select, your go-to competitive Legends of Runeterra podcast. I'm Alex. As per usual, joining me is my co-host, Hugh.
Hello.
And Noble, unfortunately, cannot be joining us today because he's banned from the podcast because he's still in Platinum.
Yeah.
So we just had to kick him off. No. Noble is away on a road trip, so doesn't have any way to be able to call in today. So it's just going to be the two of us. So, we're just going to have a nice chat about the current and the future of Legends of Runeterra, I think. So, we've got recent spoilers that's very exciting. The newest region, Bandle City, has been sort of let slip here, so we're going to get to do some speculating on that. And, the seasonal tournament is really creeping up a lot faster than I think a lot of people realized, as it kind of tends to do every season, I think.
This season far more so than,
really, yeah.
Like, I don't know, Dragon asked a question about it being 2 weeks away, and I was just like, what do you mean?
Yeah,
what do you mean I only have 2 weeks to
especially
get there?
Because it feels like content just came out, and then like 2 weeks later, more content released, and the meta changed again, and now it's like a week or 2 weeks after that, and like
more content just got released.
More content, and now it's hard to keep up. So it's crazy that the seasonal is so soon. But I mean, I know I talked a bit earlier or last season about how I really wanted to focus on various tournament lineups and the tournament side of Legends of Runeterra in general this season. And I got to take a nice step forward this weekend. I was casting a Legends of Runeterra tournament, the RCO Invitational, that was on twitch.tv/Morpadorp. You can find the VOD there if you'd like. I cast 5 rounds with Prism, and it was really fun to see what all the great players were bringing to these tournaments, especially because, this was like, it was an invitation only tournament. So, even the fact that I was casting just the first 5 rounds of Swifts, we didn't cast the top cut or anything, was still like, it was just like heavy hitting names every single round,
Yeah, I mean, I kind of wanted to ask you about just in general, like, were there any decks that like really stood out? Because I was kind of curious. I didn't actually get to tune in, so I didn't see any of the tournament.
Yeah. So the things that really stood out to me. Okay, so as Draven performed really well, and it really stood out as like kind of the dominant strategy in most of the matches, where people just kind of were getting rolled by it. It felt like a lot of the games were close, but as Draven just kind of kept squeaking out all the close games. And so that was the single deck that impressed me the most. Other than that, there were a lot of decks that stood out to me, especially in a tournament format. Sivir in particular felt like she kind of had a target on her back. There was a lot of like Gangplank, Sejuani, stuff like that was trying to kind of put a target on Sivir. Azir Irelia looked particularly good, though it looked more good in the lineups than it did actually in play as well, which I will say it felt like it got banned a lot, and it didn't really go off all that hard in the games we watched, but you could tell the deck was very powerful, and a lot of people weren't necessarily prepared for it. So that was kind of interesting. The other side, like, it felt like in general, I will say the meta was much slower. It felt like the mid-range and the control decks had the tools for pretty much the whole time, I think.
Interesting, because it seems like from what people are saying about ladder, it's been very fast.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if that's like a knee-jerk reaction to Azir Irelia existing again, and that's something we actually also might need to talk about is the resurgence of Azir Irelia. That's kind of risen to dominance in the last week or so. That's been slamming people on ladder. So people have been not too happy about that as well.
I'm really surprised it took this long. I mean, it was never bad. Like it got a little worse.
Yeah.
And then the new patch came out, and new cards came out, and obviously there's excitement. People want to play with new things, and everyone was sick of the deck, of course. But nothing really stopped that deck from being good. And it got the what is the card called? Defiant Dance.
Defiant Dance. Yeah, that card's messed up.
The card's unbelievable. Like the card, it's everything they wanted. It's just. Do you even play Homecoming anymore? I don't think
they do. They well, some of them play.
'Cause my list has 3 Defiant and 1 Homecoming.
That's pretty normal.
Yeah, okay.
3 Defiant. It's 3 Defiant across the board though. That card is absurd.
Oh, card's insane. Yeah.
So I mean, it's just a completely different dynamic you have to play around against that deck now.
Yeah.
Because before, like, Homecoming was like not that bad. Even if they were returning like Dancing Droplet, it wasn't the end of the world because, like it was good, but it still took things off their side of the board. You still got another chance to play a thing. It wasn't a disaster that often. But Defiant Dance just kills you so often. It makes you so afraid to spend all your mana on a big thing. The like Radiant Guardian plans, things like that, just get absolutely hosed by Defiant Dance. So Defiant Dance is like no joke.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the other things that stood out were really the fact that all of these like larger plans, there was only one player that I saw bring triple aggro, and admittedly that player did do very well. They made the top 8, and they were playing Fizz TF, so they were playing the like Wiggly Burblefish and everything. They were playing Pirates, I think, and then like a Sivir action deck or something like that. It was like, or I think there was a discard aggro deck maybe as well, something along those lines. So a very fast triple aggro lineup, and they were in 4-0 in Swiss and then lost I think they went 3-0 and then made top cut. So they were doing quite well. But at the end of the day, the slower mid range lineups really kind of cleaned it up. So I'm wondering if the like banning Sivir approach is going to be particularly good. I'm wondering if targeting Sivir is going to be all that good, because both of those things seemed pretty good when I was looking.
Well, I mean, the mid-range and more control side being better in tournament I don't think that's really anything new. It's, that kind of archetype has always been much more dominant in the best of 3 format than on ladder, by virtue of, both the banning phase and laddering decks just, leaning more towards the aggressive side. I don't know. Did you play the Gauntlet this last weekend at all?
No, I didn't get a chance to, unfortunately. I've played the last 2 though before then, so I couldn't play this one because I was
busy
playing in tournaments and casting tournaments, unfortunately. But in the last Gauntlet, I played a lineup of Ez Karma, Sivir Zed. I played Sivir Zed instead of Sivir Action, which in hindsight, I want to correct. I now have come over to the other side. I think that Sivir Action is better than Sivir Zed.
Okay,
is my current belief. And then I played some like big dumb Demacia Dragons deck, and just to kind of see where it was at. I kind of took this deck into the Gauntlet because I was like, I want to see how this performs.
Did it work out?
No.
Okay.
No, it didn't. It got swiftly defeated. I think I like won my first game in the round and lost 2 straight or something. So it could have went better, obviously, but most of the Gauntlets have been going all right. So
yeah, okay, cool. I have 2 Prying Glories. The last lineup I did was Thresh Nasus, Lee Zoe, and instead of the Hecarim deck that I wanted to run back because I was curious to see if it was like actually still good or if the meta just hadn't settled, I just played Ezdraven.
Yeah, Ezdraven is so good.
Yeah, and I have so many reps on it, so I just wanted to make sure I had at least 2. Now that I have 2, like I feel pretty confident I'll just be fine.
Yeah, and one of the most interesting things about Ezdraven that I liked the most about that deck in a tournament lineup format is that it just always feels like you're going to be fine playing it. And it feels like there's now like a couple of those decks that like just these like pretty good mid-range decks that generally have game against everything. I'm thinking like Gangplank Sejuani. I'm thinking Ezdraven. Ez Karma honestly fits into that category pretty close as well. Unfortunately, it clashes a little bit with Ezdraven in the champion slot for as tournaments go. And then, those 2 decks, you could bring 2 decks that just tend to have a good matchup against the field, 50-50, 55-45 at the worst. At the worst, they're going to be 45-55 against stuff, right? And then one deck that just some people are just not going to be ready for, Azir Irelia, Lee Zoe, some dumb discard aggro deck, right? And you can basically force your opponent into saying, okay, I was ready to beat Tom Rocco, dragons, some dumb Demacia deck, whatever your third deck is, discard aggro. So I can play against that, or I can't beat that. So I'm just going to have to play against your two mid-range decks. And, no matter what, you're kind of ending up in a position where you're going to have two reasonable matchups. And I saw a lot of people doing something similar to that in this tournament. And I thought that was kind of interesting because it almost guarantees that you're not going to get annihilated in the pick and ban phase, which is kind of nice.
Yeah, that's basically just always been my strategy for tournament lineups. I always play three, if I could play three decks that all have exactly 50-50 win rate against the entire field, that would be my dream. That's everything I want in a tournament lineup. But that doesn't exist, and
unfortunately,
nor should it really.
Oh yeah, that would be miserable. You'd just be playing nothing but mirrors.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I believe we have yet another content announcement, Actually, no, it released today, didn't it?
Oh yeah, it did release today. Yeah,
good God,
the lab at least.
Yeah, the lab did.
Which I actually don't know anything about the lab. I haven't gotten to play it. I don't know if you know much about it yet.
I was going to play it when I got home just before this, but I didn't get a chance to. But it looks absolutely amazing. And from the people who I've talked to who have played it, it is amazing. And it looks like a whole different game. It looks like an entirely set. It feels like they could have sold this,
marketed this game. Yeah,
they could have just sold this separately as a different game, and people would have bought. I would have bought it.
It looks so sick. Yeah. So I'm really excited to try it. I've heard nothing but good things about it. And it's just so nice to have these little labs to go play after a hard game of ladder or whatever. Or just the end of the night and you just don't want to play Legends of Runeterra, but you don't want to stress about your LP. Boom. These labs are just perfect.
Yeah, it really helps with burnout, which is very, very important, especially when ladder is as important as it is to playing getting towards Worlds, if that's your goal.
Oh, yeah. Ladder is brutally important. And real quick, Worlds is very close, too.
Is it?
It's less than 2 months away.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. So, with the World Championship is in the near future, which is terrifying. I'm hurriedly scurrying to my ladder points to try and make a climb. I think I'm just going to spike this seasonal tournament, though.
I hope so.
I'm feeling it.
Yeah.
It's about time. Yeah. I'm feeling it.
It is about time. It's time you get there.
Yeah. I've been practicing a lot. I've been thinking a lot about tournament lineups. I'm very excited to see how the tournament lineup prep is going to transfer into other things. I've been playing some scrims with people, testing matchups with various people in Discords as well. So I'm looking forward to this seasonal. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be way more stacked as well. Last season's seasonal, the cutoff or something for the top 700 was it was under 100 LP, right? It's definitely going to be higher this season too, I think. So.
Oh yeah, there's so many people have returned to the game. Everything is so new and just constantly. We're back to the constantly changing meta, every other hour or something.
It's the good old days, yeah. Where I feel like I need a new deck for breakfast and before and lunch or whatever.
Exactly. Which is a very nice change of pace, but also a little frustrating when you're trying to prepare for a tournament.
Very much so. I am taking some solace in the fact that I know right now that the seasonal is 2 weeks away, and I've been playing some decks that I think are very good, and I'm hoping to be able to come on air next week, and I'll announce it. I'll say it. I will come on air next week and say what I'm playing in the seasonal, so that I have a whole week to prepare for.
Good.
You should hold me to that.
I will.
Please do.
I absolutely will.
Yeah. So. And I'll be able to talk about the testing and why I think I'm doing what I'm doing. And maybe people can call me an idiot and it'll be just in time for me to get off a terrible lineup. But hopefully I'll just, stick to my guns and play the damn decks I think are good. Hopefully I'll get to find room for Lee Zoe. That's my one hope for the lineup.
Oh yeah, that deck is always going to be in mine, and thankfully it's like one of the best decks still.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, it's quite good for sure. I'm having a very difficult time deciding whether I want to try and play as Karma or as Draven. My heart tells me to play as Karma, but my brain's telling me to play as Draven.
Yeah, that's about where I'm at as well.
Yeah, and man, I watched as Draven crush people this weekend, and I also watched as Karma crush people this weekend. So that didn't really help me one way or the other. Also, if you guys haven't gotten the chance to play with the Scattered Pod, the 5-mana 5/6 with a tune that draws spells, that card's messed up. It's so good. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, getting a specific card is just, if you build your deck for it, it's the first card in the game we've ever had that says draw a specific card that you want.
Yeah, one of the things that I like kind of occurred to me as I put it in the deck, and like the first time I looked at the draw burst, draw fast, draw slow, I was like, okay, burst. Okay, we have time trick and deep meditation. That's it. So we're just always drawing cards with burst. So if you want to draw cards, you pick burst. And then there's slow. Okay, what is slow? Thermogenic beam. And that's it. So okay, well if I need a thermogenic beam, well I know where to get it. And then there's fast, which is just everything. In fact, generally targeted spells. It's usually removal, sometimes it's like a concussive palm or a Well of Ionia, but they function very similarly. So like you got a problem, you pick fast. And it really works so well. Just like that. You can basically pick exactly what you need at any time just because of how well divided the spells are.
That's interesting. I wasn't aware that. I just assumed you put one of the 3 spells or 2 of the categories in your deck just to make sure you drew the same card. But yeah, you're right. Now that I think about it, they are actually divided enough in function that you can just have redundancy without keeping just the one spell in the deck.
Yeah, and like if you're trying to find like a Hexite crystal or something off your Fallen Feline, it's nice that you can choose burst instead of fast, because the burst will get you either a time trick or a deep meditation, which both give you more looks at the Hexite crystal than picking a fast would, which is kind of cool. And Hexite crystal is like really important for that deck. I also have found like the games where you have Hexite crystals are sometimes laughably easy when you just like get there.
It makes sense. The card is kind of insane, as it should be, since you can't. It's pretty hard to get.
Yeah, I nabbed it off because it puts it in the bottom 10, and nab draws off the bottom.
Yeah,
and so you can pretty convincingly nab the Hexite crystals off the bottom if you're playing like GP Sejuani or something like that. And it's shockingly good sometimes against their deck. Like when they're going off with the like Eye of the Dragons and Ezreals or whatever, like 2 damage to their whole board is quite good sometimes.
Wow.
No. All right. So I think that's the general catch up with the meta. Do you have any stories or tales or decks you want to talk about or anything like that?
Not really. Nothing springs to mind. Maybe. Nothing yet.
The last thing, actually, I mentioned it briefly earlier that I want to touch on a little bit more, is that I think Sivir Akshan is better than Sivir Zed. And I've gone back and forth on that a couple times, but I finally played Sivir Akshan into Masters and a few extra LP thereafter. The Zed version I was playing a little bit before, and it's very good. They're very similar, but the Zed version feels a little bit more all in, and it feels like the consistent action, like Palace type plan, just helps you orchestrate a mid-game kill a little bit more efficiently, even if it's slightly less explosive without Zed, I think.
All of that makes perfect sense.
And I could definitely see a meta, or especially a tournament lineup. I think in particular, if you're planning to play this deck in tournament, whether or not you want Action or Zed is going to be like a lineup dependent thing. Like, what are you planning to ban? Which of these plans is better against the respective decks you can play against? And I think that actually could be a really interesting point. But for ladder, I'm going to recommend the Action variant. And I don't think you should play the like 2 Zed 1 Action build or the 2 Action 1 Zed build. I think splitting those 2 cards is just like not a good idea. Yeah. I feel like I want 3 Action because I want to play him on turn 2 because he's so insane on turn 2. Like when you have turn 1 pass with like a Shapestone in hand and then turn 2 action, you just feel like the game is over every time.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, so I guess that's all for ladder for now. So we want to talk a little bit about, this new region got announced, Bandle City, which is awesome. I'm here for the Yordles.
I'm super hyped for Bandle City being the new region. It's a very interesting choice, given that is Ixtal the only other like land mass they had the option of?
That's like the jungle, right?
Yeah, it's more like Nidalee and
there's
Rengar.
Like the Void, but that doesn't feel like a land mass.
Yeah, I know. That's like the Void is kind of like we have Rek'Sai, so we know they're not really doing the Void.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay.
I think it's basically just Ixtal. So they're essentially choosing Bandle City over this jungle. I wonder if that means we're going to ever get some champions, like maybe like Rengar or something. I think he's supposed to be from there.
Oh yeah, I think we definitely are. Like,
I guess eventually, I'm sure.
I'm pretty sure they've said they want every champion in League eventually in the game. But I'm glad they went with Bandle City just because it's such an interesting setting because it's like this. It's the Yordle City.
Yeah, and there's just so much character in those little adorable Yordles. I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, is there any Yordle? What's the Yordle champion you want the most first?
Gnar, I think.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Gnar is like the standout Yordle for me, especially because it feels like his gameplay should transfer so well into Legends of Runeterra. The fact that he like gets bigger, like it's so easy to see him level up and go into Mega Gnar. Like
that's actually such a I forget that Gnar is a Yordle and exists, but mine was going to be Vigar.
Oh, Vigar is such a good answer too.
Yeah, because also I think it's another one people forget is a Yordle, but I would just be really excited to see how they incorporate his janky infinite AP scaling into Legends of Runeterra.
Is he just gonna get like a bunch more power, or maybe he'll like keep making spells that deal more and more damage or something?
That would be good. Like after he levels up, he'll like put a spell in your hand that's like 2 mana, deal damage equal to the number of MD mana crystals you have or something like that.
Ooh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. I think that, there's so many good Yordles that, like, Kled is another one that would be hilarious in Legends of Runeterra with the squirrel. Just get him. You'd have to kill it twice, probably.
I hate Kled so much. I hate Kled so much. I can't even like fully put into words how much I despise that champion. And he's probably going to be real good. And I'm going to hate it.
Yeah, he'll probably be like Skarl Last Breath into Kled or something like that.
Oh my God. I used to play so much top lane and I can't stand playing against that champion. That champion's my nightmare. And I can't even play. I can't play him either. I suck with Kled.
I can't play that lane in general. Top lane, completely doomed. I go 07 every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen you try.
No resistance there. Yep. So there's a couple other things that have been talked about in addition to Bandle City. One of the things that I think stood out was we saw some people talking about the potential of dual region cards. And this seems like, I guess we just want to talk about it for a little bit because the prospect of that seems quite intriguing.
Yeah, exactly. Dual region. So there was, I forget who asked the question, but someone just like mentioned in our Discord like how exactly that would work, and we don't know exactly yet. To my knowledge, they didn't go in any detail in the announcement video.
No, I'm not sure it was announced or anything. I think some people were just talking about it. I don't think it's official. I'm not 100% sure.
Oh, is it not?
Maybe it is officially announced. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, 1 second.
Okay, yeah, I've got it here. So, yeah, it is still speculation at this point. We don't have anything confirmed, but we do have some kind of reasonable evidence from an at least somewhat credible source about dual region cards existing. So to my understanding, it was leaked that they've data mined assets in the game to show that there are certain borders, like card borders and card art borders, that allow 2 regions to be shown on the like card art banner type thing. Now I guess it's pretty obvious what that probably implies. That more than likely we're going to end up with cards that have not 1 but 2 regions.
Right. And real quick, the person who made a video about this and leaked it, the Skilled Roy, has been right about things in the past and is a reasonably credible source for this. And this isn't just some random person.
It is still speculative.
Yes, it is still speculative.
Yeah. Nothing is confirmed here at all. But we do have some reason to believe these things. So
absolutely,
it's kind of interesting to think about.
And at the absolute worst case scenario, it's the community is talking about it a lot. And that alone makes it kind of worth talking about. It's just an interesting concept. So dual region cards, I've seen some questions in our Discord about this and how that would work. The way I envisioned it working is, say you have I guess we'll just use the example that we saw in the video, Senna as a Demacia Shadow Isles card.
Yeah, it was a good example. Senna's, very connected to Shadow Isles in the lore, but she's from Demacia, so
exactly. And the way I interpreted dual regions operating in this game would be that if you have a dual region card, so Senna, Demacia, Shadow Isles, if you were running any deck with Shadow Isles with any region combination, doesn't matter if it's Shadow Isles, Bilgewater, or whatever, you are allowed to put Senna in your deck because she's technically part of Shadow Isles, but not any other Demacia card because you're not playing Demacia. And that's basically just like widening the coverage and the playability of any dual region card.
There's an interesting so the thing we don't know, I will say, I guess, about these dual region cards, assuming that they do exist, is are they going to be one region or another region? Or will they be one region and another region? And the difference between that, I think, is, like you said, if you're playing any Shadow Isles deck, you could put the Demacia Shadow Isles Senna in it. Whereas if it's and the regions, Shadow Isles and Demacia, you could only play it in exactly Shadow Isles Demacia. The Senna, for example. I suspect that it's going to be one or the other. I suspect that they're going to let you play the champion in more decks as opposed to less. Just because that's kind of how it's always... They just want people to be able to play the champions in more decks, I think, and let these developers. They don't want to make it so that you can't play your favorite champion because, the regions are too restrictive.
Right, I would agree. And the only reasonable argument I saw was the one that was made in the video for making them more restrictive, is that you could make more powerful cards.
Yeah.
And that is the one way I could see that being true. But even so, I think that purely just on game feel, it's going to feel bad if you have a champion come out and it's like the champion you're excited for. Like after all this time, it's like, this is why I'm playing Legends of Runeterra. All of a sudden getting into it is because my favorite champion's getting printed and you can't play them in any deck you like because they happen to be a very specific region combination that you don't particularly enjoy.
Yeah, and if it's bad, it's really doomed too, because you have to play it in that exact deck. It's not like you really have a lot of room to try a different thing. You're basically just going to be stuck. You could take a couple cards in, a couple cards out, but at the end of the day, if you're playing a Demacia Shadow Isles Senna deck, it's probably going to be built around Senna, and there's probably going to be at least 15 cards or whatever that put themselves into the deck that you have to play. So how much brewing is there really to do in that world? When I think of, and that's not to say that the more powerful cards thing isn't good. That's generally how Magic the Gathering does it. That the multicolored cards in that game are just generally better because they're harder to play. And that is a good system in Magic, I think. It actually plays quite well there. So, I don't think it would be a disaster if they did it that way or anything.
I agree, but I do still think for sure that because this game kind of boasts being able to play any card with any other card for the most part, I don't see why they would... suddenly make things more restrictive. I think they want think they want to widen the net a bit and let people play with more of the things they want to play with and give players more agency, because that's just a thing people like.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the things that concerns me about, there's a couple things that concerns me about existence of dual region cards. And one is just balance. It suddenly makes the dev's job way, way harder to test things, because there's suddenly so many more permutations. Like any dual region card can go in way more things than a singular region card.
Very scary. Any card that is slightly overtuned can suddenly be in every deck. You know, like if you just print a Loyal Badger Bear, that's just a 4/4. It's just a little too good. You could just put that card in every deck, right? Like it doesn't have to be the best card in the game or anything, but it's pretty easy to imagine a meta becoming, Merciless Hunters in every single deck or whatever, just because it's the best 3-drop.
Oh God, wouldn't that be miserable? Merciless Hunter in literally every deck.
Yeah, that's not not too different from the current state of ladder, I must say.
Oh, is it really? I haven't seen. I mean, I don't know. I guess Freeman's pretty dominant.
It's really not that bad. That's an exaggeration, but there is a lot of Merciless Hunter on ladder right now. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, and the other big thing, other than balance, is purely just game design wise it's kind of a concern, because something they seem to be doing is running out of, or I shouldn't say running out of, they're using up a lot of cool design space in their game. And what I mean by design space is there's a lot of things you can put on a card in Legends of Runeterra. And like, for example, they can make more keywords. That's design space. They can add another card type. That's more designs. Like there's more ways to innovate in the game when you add a new thing to it. Like landmarks were put into place, and suddenly there's a whole new card type that you can interact with, build cards around, build decks around, and you need to balance around. And it feels like putting dual region cards into the game this quickly, and granted we don't have an exact release schedule, but we did see that they're planning on doing a lot of releases with a bonus release in November.
We're getting a lot of content, apparently.
We're getting tons of content.
We're getting
so quickly.
Lammed with content, which I guess makes sense given the schedule for Worlds, actually, now that I think about it. I bet Riot is going to put out a lot of things near the World Championship and for the World Championship and all that. That might be why we're going to see a lot more releases.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But even so, this game has given us so much so quickly, and they're just giving us more and more and more. And as much as I love this game and getting more content for this game, I am concerned that they're going to kind of start running out of ideas a lot faster than they need to.
You're worried they're just going to blow their load.
Basically, yeah. I mean, they don't need to do this much this quickly. Like, the game's in a great place, and if they just let it sit for a bit, that's okay. Like, people are having a good time, and I've realized that yes, there is we're back to the old state of the subreddit a little bit, where people are just complaining about Azarelia again, which isn't entirely unreasonable. It's back and it's good.
I feel like as long as that deck is even remotely playable, the Reddit will be complaining about it.
Yeah, I think so too.
If some random guy loses to his Irelia in Silver 3, you're going to hear about it on the Reddit.
Yeah, and it's the same thing for Lee Sin, but whatever.
It's true.
That doesn't matter. I'm just worried that they're restricting themselves a little too early, and because there's so much they could do with what they have now. They don't need to go this hard.
They are constantly innovating. We've yet to see them really. I guess I feel like Legends of Runeterra is doing a lot of horizontal expansion and not as much vertical expansion. And let me explain what I mean by that a little bit more. So they're constantly creating new things, new mechanic,
new card type,
a new champion with their new champion specific kit, tools, etc. And it doesn't feel like we're going back and getting as many more tools for the older decks or the older mechanics. I understand that we had the dragon expansion a while ago, but maybe Demacia could use a cool new dragon or a couple new dragon support cards or whatever, right? Yeah, I guess we got that one dragon out of this, a couple dragons out of the Viego expansion. So maybe that was a poor example. Or, maybe like healing, like Shiraka. When was the last time we saw like the Targon healing half of, that whole mechanic? When was the last time we saw more cards for that archetype or whatever, right? It feels like every time there's a new expansion, we get a new archetype. And I really don't have a problem with this. It is really nice. Like, it's really nice. It's really fast paced. It keeps everything fresh. But I do wonder if that's going to slow way down once we finally have all 10 regions and we aren't getting new regions anymore. Maybe we actually will start getting that vertical building and the like more depth of the card pool available in each archetype.
That's actually a really good point. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, they are kind of spreading themselves a bit thin almost. It feels like there's just more and more archetypes being added, but not a ton of support for each individual one. And I would definitely like to see just more volume in this, like along certain themes instead of making new ones.
Yeah, maybe some more in random invoke synergies, right?
Oh God, invoke still. I haven't thought about that keyword, and
I just picked, that was all Targon, right? Like what about another Nab synergy card? How about like there's a lot of mechanics that you just. What about how about another augment support card? Right. I guess we got Glorious Evolution recently, but that does not count. I refuse to accept that counts. So
yeah, they are kind of just making a bunch of new stuff and not giving as much to what we already have, which a lot of people seem to be enjoying.
And I am one of them. To be fair, I'm kind of playing devil's advocate here. I really do like all of the content we're getting. I think it's really fun, and I've never once thought to myself, man, I really wish I had another payoff for my augments. So like, I don't really feel like I'm missing anything in that category. I have felt like I wanted some more Nab stuff, but that's because I like drawing cards, so Nab is dope.
Yeah, Nab is dope.
That and anytime Black Market Merchant is like even remotely playable, it just makes me want to nab my opponent's like whole deck.
Oh yeah, that card feels amazing when it works.
Yeah, and it's good right now too. You can nab your opponent's stuff all day long. Yordle Grifter, that card's messed up.
Card is messed up, and thankfully it is an Allegiance card because Allegiance is that's something I want to see more support for. Allegiance
is cool. Yeah,
I love that keyword.
It's good. Yeah, I really like Allegiance.
It's such an interesting deck building restriction.
Yeah, there's a lot of keywords on Legends of Runeterra. I guess that that's something I haven't thought about a little bit. The more keywords you add to, the harder it gets for newer players. Thankfully, Legends of Runeterra is like so easy to look at. The cards are like so obvious. It's so blatant what they do. Right, like there's some card games where you look at a card. Like let's think about Yu-Gi-Oh. You've seen a Yu-Gi-Oh card, right, Hugh?
Oh God,
exactly. Like they have like paragraphs of text on them in this just tiny like 3-point font, and the art is like, I mean, it's kind of cool, but it's small, and there's just a lot going on a Yu-Gi-Oh card, right? And Legends of Runeterra does not have that problem. It doesn't feel like, any of the cards are overly complicated. If there's a keyword, you just hover your mouse over it and it tells you exactly what it does. And none of them are that complicated, right? So, I don't think over complexity is a problem LOR is quickly approaching, but it is something to consider. We're entrenched players. We've seen all of these things come out, so we're accustomed to them. But the more things there are, the harder it is for more and more players to get into it.
That is true. Thankfully, we do have the online medium, so you can just mouse over it and it does what it says, but that is still time spent reading.
Yeah, and sometimes it's weird.
That's true.
Especially if you're coming from like Magic.
There are definitely interactions in this game that I still don't know. There are games that I play where I'm like, oh God, I wonder how this card interacts with this other card.
Yeah, that happens frequently.
And I don't know the answer, and I'll have to just like roll the dice and be like, I hope it works this way, because if it doesn't, I lose the game.
Yep. So here we go.
Yeah.
And that's also something that's going to be true with like deck building when there's this many regions, like when we have all 10 regions. I don't think the difference between 9 and 10 is all that much to write home about. So, but it is quite a bit more complex than when we started playing and there were only 6 regions, right? Like remember the like first seasonal when we were like, oh wow, the first tournament I think I ever played was like region locked, so you had to use all 6 regions, because and you could only use one in each deck, so you just ended up having to use all 6, and you got to combine them any way you wanted, but there was no choice. You had to use all 6 regions in one way or another. We are not there anymore.
So miserable. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad we aren't there, admittedly, but
yeah, no, that's just not a very good system. But
yeah, it got better once Bilgewater got added, so you could use like 6 of the 7, so that you didn't have to use one of them. Even being able to not use one of them added a lot of permutations. Okay, so anyway, I think that's about all I have to say as far as dual region cards. Do you have anything else you want to add?
not really. It's a very interesting theory, and I'm excited to see if it actually ends up happening. The source is reasonable, but obviously it's not 100% confirmed, in spite of how good the evidence may look.
Yeah, it seems likely, but you never know. My idea might get scrapped. So, all right. I think that brings us to that time of the episode where we do our listener questions for the week. Starting with our question of the week. This one comes from XD60. They ask, LOR is a free-to-play game, as are many other digital card games. However, unlike others, no hate to any of these games, like Hearthstone and MTG Arena require a much larger monetary investment for high-tier decks / renewal or starting of a good collection. My question is, do you think this model can last? LOR has received a vast amount of funds from cosmetic items, but do you think that is enough to keep the game afloat?
Short answer, yes. And the reason I say that is because Riot is like, that is Riot's entire business model. League of Legends is
the most played game on the planet.
I think Fortnite beats it now.
Maybe, but
anyway, it's like,
yeah, it might have been.
If it's not the most popular game on the planet, it's close. I think it has like 150 million concurrent users or something like that.
Ridiculous.
Yeah,
there's like more League of Legends accounts that have been made than people on the planet, I think.
I believe
like
that
over 8 billion or something.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
Exactly. And you ask any even like a casual League player, for the most part, they've spent a decent amount of money on that game.
Yeah.
Like probably triple digits.
Most people spend triple digits. Most people, when they've been playing for years, end up in like 1,000, in the 4 digits, without a doubt.
Absolutely. And because Riot's been doing this whole free-to-play cosmetic, pay for cosmetics model for so long, and they've done it so well, I have no reason to believe that that's like they're going to screw anything up with Legends of Runeterra. Like, I don't know. I've already paid far more. I mean, of course I paid far more. I've paid $0 to League of Legends, but I've spent like probably $50 or something on Legends of Runeterra, and that's a lot of money for me.
That's close to a full price release game. Right?
Yeah, like, exactly.
And that's as good of a marketing plan as any of the other games have, on any other triple games have, basically.
Yeah, and especially if they fix this complaint people are having with the skins and actually giving them new level up animations instead of just alt art, like revenue's going to explode.
Have you seen how good these emotes are? There's no way they are going to go out of business.
Oh yeah.
These emotes are so good. There's no way. Like this, if they can release this quality emotes every patch, they don't need to. They could make all the cards free, and they'd probably make money. And at the same time, all the cards aren't free. Probably once a year, even a player, an LOR player that isn't a hardcore LOR player is probably going to have to drop $20, every other expansion or whatever to be able to play with all of the cards on release or whatever. The dedicated players, sure, they're going to have a lot of built up extra dust. They won't have to pay, but that's going to be true in pretty much any game that's free to play. A lot of League of Legends is the same. If you have a bunch of dust, you don't have to buy the new champion when it comes out. So if you play the game a lot, you won't have to buy cards, but usually those players are the ones that are going to buy emotes because they play the game a lot, or skins. So like it kind of self-balances itself out. That's kind of the genius of this marketing system, I think, is that like the experienced players, that don't have to buy the cards are going to buy the cosmetics because they play the game a lot, and the people who don't play the game a lot aren't going to buy the cosmetics because they don't play the game a lot, but they're going to buy the cards
because they want to play more.
Because they want to play the cards they want to play, but they don't play the game a lot.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, it's just, cosmetics is such a smart monetary system, and it doesn't, the beauty of it, it doesn't lock anyone out of the game. Anyone can just go on their computer right now and click download and just be playing Legends of Runeterra in like 5 minutes.
Or your phone.
Yeah. I mean, that's another huge part of it. Just it being on mobile widens everything.
So nice.
Yeah.
I love being able to just play in the car or whatever. I traveled to a Magic the Gathering tournament and played Legends of Runeterra in the car on the way, and it was great. You know?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, our next question comes from Dr. Beeves. They ask, what are some tools you'd like control/reactive decks to get that they don't currently have? I guess I'll start with this one. One thing that I think I want them to get a little bit more healing options. I think it feels like you can't really have healing outside of Shadow Isles in your control deck, and I wish I could play a slower deck in a different region that had ways to heal my Nexus. I guess Freljord can do it too, but me and Freljord's Nexus heal like sucks outside of Kindly Tavern Keeper. Like I don't want to have to play a Catalyst of Aeons in my control deck just because it's a control deck.
Blighted Ravine counts.
Blighted Ravine is good. I guess you're right. I guess really, I want to be able to play healing in my Ezreal deck. That's kind of where I'm landing.
Yeah, because the one of health potion is not it.
No, and I'm even a fan of the one of health potion.
Oh yeah, I am too. I just like, God, you do
for that reason. But that card sucks. Yeah, I really wish I didn't have to play it. You know, like there's like Tasty Fey Folk, which is like not a bad card or anything. It just I guess I wish there was like a spell. Also, I feel like, you know, I talked a little bit about how I thought that like the control and reactive decks were actually like quite good right now. I actually think they're like much better than the aggro decks. So in general, like I'm not really sure they need anything, to be honest. So.
Yeah, I'm not convinced that they really need anything either. I will say that Ionia has a more access to healing than we think in that Eye of the Dragon exists.
Oh, yeah, I kind of forgot about that one.
Yeah.
That card's messed up.
The card is messed up. And like, I would like healing to stay almost completely out of certain regions. Like, I don't think Noxus should ever have healing that's not attached to a lifesteal creature.
Yeah, that's probably fair.
And I feel similarly about Bilgewater. PNZ can probably have healing, but I don't want it to be everywhere. Like there's certain strategies that like get, I guess burn just gets a lot worse when every region has some access to healing. And I think that it's really nice when you can look at a region combination and think, aha, this is how I need to play this game, because it changes drastically based on what you see.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a very big strength of this game. And I'd like that to mostly stay the same and for them to try their best to maintain the current region identities as best they can. Obviously, branching out a little bit is encouraged and okay, because no one wants to be pigeonholed in the same thing forever. But, you know.
Yeah, the other thing that comes to my mind that the current system of the game actually doesn't allow for is a creature counter spells. We have, you know, deny, but then only counter spells or abilities. There's no way to prevent a creature that your opponent casts from entering the battlefield currently. So, you know, I don't really know how you would have a creature counter spell in this game because like the system doesn't really work. But I guess I do wish the control decks could have that potential. Sometimes dealing with Captain Farron after he comes down is not good enough.
That's true. The only way I could see that working is if you had a card that said obliterate the last creature to be summoned or something.
Yeah, something like that.
And like fast speed, because God, that spell cannot be burst. That would be not okay.
Yeah, heinous.
And that's as close as I can think of. But
yeah, and it still wouldn't be perfect, probably.
As far as reactive options that I would want, I kind of want, well, no, there's not really anything that I can think of, because I was going to say, like, well, maybe I want something in Ionia that can deal with creatures a little more permanently, but they shouldn't. And it also goes against what I just said about them sticking to region identities. Like, that's just not what Ionia does.
Yeah, I think they've done a good job outlining the control shells, to be honest. They feel like they do what they're supposed to do, and they're good.
And they feel different in the right ways.
Yeah. Oh, I want more good predict spells.
Ooh, yes.
To make my fallen felines better. Because, my God, do I love me some fallen feline.
I just want, like, 1 or 2 more decent predict cards in Piltover and Zon.
Just one. I'll take one. All I need is one.
I'll take one as well, but I'd like 2. I would like 2.
I want like 3 mana Mystic Shot predict.
That would be nice. That would be real nice.
Now we're talking. Get these awful get exciteds out of my deck.
You don't like get excited?
I mean, I play it because I have to, but every time I have to discard a card in my hand, I cry a little bit.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's not like we have freebies in this deck, you know. It's like every time you discard a card, you have to like tank for like, you know, the entire length of the timer, if you're me, on which of these cards you're least likely to need in the future. And then in 4 turns, you kick yourself when you inevitably discarded the wrong one every time.
Yeah, I mean, or you could just play Gotcha if you don't want to make that choice.
I played that one too.
Oh, okay.
You need them. Gotcha is so good. My one complaint, my next gripe with that deck is that when you cast Deep Meditation and then draw your gotchas, you often don't have the mana to play your gotchas because you just cast Deep Meditation. That's the sad truth of it. All right, our next question comes from Merciless Carinal. They ask, I love Draven. I like playing Ezreal. But playing as Draven absolutely bores the crap out of me. Are there any champ comps that you theoretically should love but can't stand playing? I actually have the same answer you do, Carinal, which is that it's exactly as Draven. My God, I should love everything about that deck. And yeah, I go on, I say it's good, I say it's great, and then the next week I'll go on the air saying that it sucks and it's my least favorite deck ever because every time I play it, I just can't win. I can't win close games. All of the games are close and I can never win them.
God damn it. Now
you can have the same answer.
I was okay.
It's a common theme, so, I've noticed.
Yeah. So first of all, my answer was also going to be as Draven at first.
It's true.
The thing is, as Draven's existed for a long time, and for the first like third of its lifespan, I hated that deck as well. It doesn't make sense for me either because like everything about that deck I should love, and I eventually started enjoying it. I don't remember exactly what changed, but something just clicked for me and the deck started to finally make sense. And it is now like one of my favorite decks, but it is very interesting that a deck that like everything it does should click with you and be great, and it just doesn't sometimes. Like, here we go. Discard aggro.
Yeah.
I can't stand discard aggro. I hate it. It just doesn't I die to it all the time, and then I play it, and I'm like, I can't do any damage with this deck. Like, what is happening? Like, I've played so many games, and I just can't win with discard aggro.
I had that problem. Well, I guess I never had a problem winning with TF Fizz, but I did have a problem enjoying it, which was also interesting. Was like, I mean, that deck was so busted that like.
Oh, I loved that deck.
You could basically win a lot of games with your eyes closed sometimes, but
yeah.
But I you guys talked all the time about how much you love that deck, and the whole time I love drawing cards and discarding cards and doing busted things with cards, and that deck never did it for me.
Yeah, it's weird too because like we have Jinx Draven as our discard aggro champions, and I can't stand it, but I absolutely love Lulu Jinx.
I knew you were going to say Lulu Jinx.
I love that deck.
That deck is really sweet, right?
It's so much fun, and it's pretty decent.
It's not bad at all. I think it's really good. I think
it's like tier 1.5.
I think it's really good. Like actual good tournament deck.
Yeah.
To be honest.
It's totally reasonable.
One of the decks that I would heavily consider bringing to a tournament if I was trying to play an aggressive lineup.
Yeah.
It's like shockingly resilient. Like Lulu is not to be messed with.
No, not at all. And like, there's a lot of like a 4/4 Daring Poro is terrifying.
And Mountain Sojourners, that card, you know, it's a different thing, but like that card, like the support archetype with Taric as well. Because I've seen Lulu Taric as well, also messed up. That card is so good.
Yeah, now that card is playable, it's terrifying.
Yeah, it killed me so hard the first time it saw play. I remember being like, that card got buffed, but it won't be good anymore. And then like later that night, I just got completely hosed by it as soon as it hit the battlefield.
Yep.
All right, our next question is from Dragon. They say, the seasonal is only 2 weeks away. Have you begun to think of lineups for this seasonal? If so, what do you have in mind? Well, yes, I have been thinking of lineups for the seasonal. I'm glad you asked. I'm still deciding what I want to do about Sivir. Sivir is like one of my favorite archetypes in general. I think that I'm probably going to be playing a Sivir deck, and I think I'm probably going to be playing a lineup that's trying to deal with Sivir. So I'm thinking of playing Sivir, like a Sivir action deck, maybe Sivir Zed, depending on what my other 2 cards are. I'm probably going to register the full 3 Spirits Refuge. It's, by the way, if you don't know, it's the best card in the mirror, Spirits Refuge. There's basically no ways to deal with it, especially because the best ways to deal with the units that matter, like Sivir Rune Runner, is like vulnerable, which goes straight through the spell shield, right? And then and then quick attack. And they basically just have no answers to barrier at all. And that's another reason why I think we've seen a little bit of Fiora coming back, which actually I think we have a question about in a little bit. But I plan to play, I'm probably going to be playing a Sivir deck, probably with 3 Spirits Refuge, maybe like GP Sejuani. That's another deck that's at the top of my list. And Ezdraven is another phenomenal choice. If I had to submit my lineup today, it would be that.
Interesting. I know that so far, if I had to lock in a lineup right this second, it would be what I just prime gloried the last gauntlet with, which is Thresh Nasus, Ezdraven, Lee Zoe.
Ooh, yeah, Lee Zoe is really good. Lee Zoe is a deck that I really want to find room in my lineup for, because that and Viego Piles are the 2 decks that I really want to test out, because Viego looked really good specifically into all of the mid-range control stuff. It like seemed really, really good against Ezdraven. And we saw a couple close games with Ez Karma versus Viego decks where, I mean, like really close. One of them actually, I think, got decided by a Viego bug, or the Viego.
Oh God.
Yeah. A creature died and a Nasus died, and the Viego got +2 power instead of plus like 12 or something. And then the Viego didn't flip and didn't, kill the Karma, and then the game was over.
Oh,
it was pretty sad, but Viego's really buggy, so that would be a reason why I might not bring him. But I want to do some testing with Viego. I want to do some testing with Lee Zoe, specifically because it's so good against the Viego decks, and the other mid-range decks kind of struggle.
Yeah, I think the deck I'm most interested in learning right now that's new and seems interesting is GP Sejuani. That is a deck.
That's great.
Yeah, that it looks like pretty much right up my alley. I love leveling GP as well. It's like one of my favorite things to do in the game.
Yep.
And Sejuani existing in the deck is just like
so good right now. Level 2 Sejuani is just game.
Nothing like it answers everything I'm afraid of.
Yeah, and that's I think one of the reasons why we've seen less of the Lee Sin deck lately is because of the Sejuani deck has been more and more popular, because like the list of decks that cannot beat level Sejuani is like most of them. It's like Lee Sin can't beat it. Sivir decks can't beat it ever. Most aggressive decks completely out of the water against level 2 Sejuani, because you can flip it. You can trigger it every turn. That's what the whole deck is made to do.
Exactly.
There's no turn where your board isn't going to get frostbit against this deck once they have a level 2 Sejuani. And if you don't have a way to beat that, then you are kind of in trouble.
Yeah, that deck's existence is the reason I almost didn't play Lee Zoe in my last lineup. And thankfully, I didn't have to play against that deck a single time. I didn't even see it in a lineup, otherwise I would have banned it. But that's the deck I'm most afraid of, and therefore that's the deck I need to play the most.
That's the deck that's also making me, or mostly making me consider playing as Karma instead of as Draven, because the lack of healing in as Draven really matter. Like, those warning shots add up. Like I was watching one of the games that I got to cast this weekend actually was like an as Draven player that went to like 7 or whatever, and then got burned out by triple warning shot, triple ice shard, double make it rain.
Yeah.
just burned out. And it's like, yeah, I mean, there's just like nothing they can do about it.
Yeah.
Right? You know, you're like, look, you can just add one over and over and over again against Esdraven with that deck very reliably. And eventually you'll get to 20.
Absolutely.
All right. Our next question comes from Leovold. They ask, when it comes to LOR, there tends to be a shift in the meta for ladder and tournament style play. And some decks, such as Deep or Teemo Ezreal, tend to perform better in the ladder. The ladder being the tournament play, not ladder. Okay. With the additional cards this season, do you see any other decks that may do well in best of 3, but we may not see on ladder? Have you tried to brew any decks specifically for best of 3 with a plan in mind for its lineup?
The only deck. So I haven't brewed any of my own decks. I have had.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Fortunately.
I mean, I think I can say for both of us, we're both garbage at building decks.
God
from
awful.
Scratch. Just terrible.
I try it about once a season and immediately regret it every time.
I think I'm a tiny bit better than you, but not by much.
Yeah.
And we're both trash at it.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone worse than me.
Yeah, that's yeah. But that being said, I have been sent a few very interesting lists. The mono, or not mono, but the list playing Hecarim that I got sent a while back that I used. I loved that deck. I still love that deck, and I do want to try and see if it has legs now that Viego exists. And I want to see if I just need to be playing Viego instead and not at all trying to be playing Hecarim.
Viego is really good.
I know Viego's good.
Yeah.
But the cards are like just different enough that I might.
It's a weird deck to play.
Yeah.
Yeah, really weird because a lot of the time you're just supposed to like sacrifice your whole board to flip your Viego, and that doesn't feel right. It feels awful when you're doing it and then you flip Viego and win immediately sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, flip Viego is just not okay.
Completely nonsensical. So it's really hard to know when you're supposed to try to take over the game with Viego, because Viego's one of those champions that as soon as he enters, the whole game becomes about him, I've found. And like it kind of like Karma, honestly. Like Karma or Lee Sin, like it's like, okay, you know, this is the game now. It's like I cannot win the game while you have a Viego, and you cannot win the game unless you have a Viego. So like that just becomes the game until it's resolved pretty much. And then people try to go on from there.
Yeah.
As far as like I've seen some like Teemo Z decks that look a little bit better in tournament than they do on ladder for me. If you're trying to play like aggressive decks, you could play like, you know, Teemo Z, Fizz TF, you know, third deck or whatever, discard aggro, that type of thing. Really try and beat some people down, which doesn't seem all that bad. I've seen some like LeBlanc Ash as well, which, you know, not a brew or anything, but opens up. I think a lot of the ladder decks are playing LeBlanc Sejuani because Sejuani is so good right now, but that opens up Sejuani to be played in a Gangplank Sejuani deck, so you can play a lot more. You know, you could play like Ash LeBlanc, GP Sejuani as Draven for just like the 3 most mid-rangiest decks possible. And like you could just go to mid-range town on everybody, just like see if that's good enough. And it, like, honestly, it probably is not an awful plan, you know? So any particular brews, I'm not so sure. I'm sure that people will show up with good brews for this tournament. Maybe Targon's Peak again. I don't know. Seems not good to me, but
that card's never seemed good, and then Dragon took it to top 32, and I was beast. Like, you know, all right, I guess I got to reevaluate my entire life.
All right, our next question is from Snodfoblah. They ask, is the fact that the top 20 on ladder are like 80% Sivir Ionia representative of the meta? What interesting lineups become possible when you can ban Sivir in tourneys? All right, so as far as the ladder goes, I'll straight up say I do think that like Sivir Ionia is the best deck you can be playing on ladder. I've had the most success with it. The games are fast. The games are powerful. You can tell quickly like whether or not you have a good draw or a bad draw. And like you can sculpt your plan accordingly. It has the ability to really pressure opponents, which I think is really good. So I'm really not at all surprised that it's like 80% of the top 20. This kind of happens a lot where a lot of the top players realize or enjoy a similar style of deck. And that doesn't always trickle down to the lower levels of play. It's often representative of some things, and I do think it is representative of the meta. I would say that most of the time, if you queue up for a game right now, like you're going to run into some Shurima units of some variety and people trying to get you dead more often than not, I would say. And I don't have the numbers to back that up or whatever, but like there's a lot of Shurima units on the ladder. It's just kind of the way it is. Admittedly, I think the Shurima unit games are incredibly fun, and I think that's generally echoed by most people. So like I have no problems with the meta, though. You know, the Sivir decks are maybe getting to be a little bit like there's too many of them, but
Yeah, interestingly enough, I haven't found it to be overwhelming. I haven't played a ton of ladder, disclaimer, but it definitely feels a bit more diverse in Diamond, where I still am, because like I said, I haven't gotten to play that much. I'm definitely relying more on the Last Chance Gauntlet to qualify than I am on ladder at this point. But it doesn't feel like the 80% that it seems to be at the highest level.
Yeah, as far as decks that are possible in tournaments, if you're banning Sivir, there's probably like quite a bit that opens up to you as far as decks. It makes pretty much all of the mid-range decks much more appealing when you don't have to worry about getting through all of the spell shield type nonsense. You know, like Esdraven is definitely, you know, it's not dead in the water against these decks or anything, but there's a lot of decks that, you know, the spell shields are really bad and they have a hard time dealing with. There's a lot of decks that are just too slow, like Deep, maybe. Deep is a great tournament deck. That's actually a question that I should have answered, deck that I should have answered for the last question too. Like Deep is a good tournament deck and a bad ladder deck.
Yeah.
And it has been for pretty much its entire lifespan, excuse me. Overwhelm, another kind of similar thing, like Renekton Sejuani type thing. These are all decks that are just a little bit too slow for ladder. But if you can ban the fastest, most aggressive creature deck, at least for the most part, you know, you're still going to end up against discard aggro or pirates some amount of the time, but that's a different beast. You know, maybe you have a little bit more time to set up more powerful mid-rangey combos. So,
yeah, and for me, I would say that similar to how last season was kind of looking like you were building your lineup around beating or banning Azarelia or Thresh Nasus or something like that. It looks like these Sivir piles are what you're going to be focusing on.
yeah, kind of the story of the day.
Exactly. And there's a strategy that I've used. Maybe, okay, you're more of a numbers guy, so if you can tell me that this is objectively wrong all the time, please let me know. But
Yeah.
there is a decent amount of the time, like maybe a third of the time, where I look at someone's lineup and I don't ban the deck I'm least likely to beat with my lineup. I ban like the second best one, because I'm okay with losing one of the games because their third deck that they like have to play, I know I can beat with any of my three decks very reliably, like 60% of the time.
That's totally right.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
At least, like, I don't know. I mean, there need to be some more situational things going on, obviously.
Yeah.
But if you are, you know, your plan to win a match can be anything, but it's important to have one. Your plan being, I'm going to beat this deck twice, is a totally fine plan. There's a reason the match is best of 3. You can beat somebody's deck twice. You know, if you just are never going to lose to Sivir, that can be your plan for the tournament. And if you hit a Sivir deck every time, you know, every round and never lose to it, you can win the whole tournament, right? Like that, you know? That's easier said than done, obviously. But it's not an unreasonable strategy. And in fact, a lot of the time you end up in that situation in matches where you do have a deck that you're like, was not ready for that one. Let's see if we can, you know, squeeze out 2 against discard aggro or whatever.
Yeah, as counterintuitive as it seems, my tournament strategy is much more often revolved around winning 3 games instead of, winning 3 games, playing 3 games than winning the first 2, and like being okay with just taking a loss that I know is going to happen just to have a much better final matchup into the same deck twice.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes you just end up in a position where, like, you know, mental is tested a lot in tournaments. Going to game 3 over and over again is quite difficult, mentally taxing. It's hard to go down to lose the first game in a match and then rally and win the next 2, right? It's much easier to just win 2 games and move on and then have that be that and have no problems. But of course, that's never going to happen during any tournament. Like in any tournament, you're going to find yourself down 0-1 and have to win the next 2 games or whatever. So making sure you have solid mental for those situations. You're not out of the tournament until you're out of the tournament. Like until you've lost and the tournament is over, like you are not dead. You're not dead yet. So
yeah, that is the one downside to having that strategy is it was killing me.
It is hard.
I'm pretty sure I didn't play a single round where I didn't play 3 games. I'm pretty sure I played 3 games on every single one of my rounds.
Yeah, that'll do it. Okay, and our last question is from Snonfobla as well. They mention also in the last day or so, I've seen a bit more Shen Fiora instead of J4 Shen. Thoughts? Fiora's been back. I don't know if you've seen.
I haven't.
Fiora's been kind of making a ruckus up at the top of the Masters ladder lately. Going out with some Shen, replacing J4, and back to collect on all these dancing blades that are around everywhere. And she looks pretty good. She's good against most of the units that are being played right now. There's a lot of small units that can be eaten. Whether they be sand soldiers or young witches or crackshot corsairs, etc. There's a lot of things she can just normally eat. It's a lower curve, which matters quite a bit because most of the time it feels like these Shen decks, they are going to win a slightly later game against all the Shurima decks, and for the most part GP Sejuani too, as long as they can keep Sejuani off the board. But that deck has a lot of equity in being able to pull it and then get their board frostbitten and then double Twin Discipline or whatever to be able to still kill the Sejuani. So they've got a little bit more counterplay than other decks. And I just think Fiora's pretty good right now, to be honest.
Yeah, now that I think about it, it makes a lot of sense given that vulnerable and therefore challenge is that deck's biggest weakness.
Yep, absolutely.
And that's the entire thing that deck is built around. And Sivir isn't actually very survivable. She's only tanky, tanky is the wrong word. She's only resilient on the attack.
Yeah, with the quick attack defense.
Exactly. And from spells. So the moment she's a blocker,
she's completely out for element, right? Yeah. As soon as you can pull her in some way, be it challenger or vulnerable, that is when Sivir is at her weakest. And that exploit is being used, which I think is so cool.
And the decks that have Sivir are generally the exact right amount of slow for Shen Fiora to compete with. It's not like all these before where Azarelia was just getting under you, or the other discard aggro is just also going wide. You're not dying too fast. It's a few big creatures that are killing you a little bit slower, and that's where Fiora Shen can do its thing.
Yeah, and if you can line up blocks and keep your HP high, you have a really good chance of not getting randomly combo killed in the mid game, especially because it's not super easy to give Ruin Runner double strike or whatever, double attack, which is probably the best way you're going to be able to snipe this deck out of nowhere because they have a lot of blockers and the blockers are big. It's not easy to kill all of their units. It feels like your Merciless Hunters are really taxed in these matchups. I've played a lot of the Sivir side of this matchup. It's one of the harder matchups, the J4 Civ, or the J4 Shen decks. I played against Fiora Shen twice. I've played against a lot of J4 Shen, and I didn't see Fiora in either game, unfortunately. So I don't really have a great opinion on it, but I imagine that the Fioras would have been good in both games if they had them. So
Fiora Shen is one of my favorite decks to have ever existed in this game. So I'm very interested in giving this a try.
Oh yeah, you should try it. It's good. Yeah, I think it's quite good. I haven't gotten the chance to play any games with it, but I've loved the Shen J4 deck. I think the J4 Shen deck is incredibly well positioned. That's another deck that's on my short list to test for the seasonal. Maybe Fiora Shen's better. You never know. We'll have to see.
I certainly hope so.
Yeah, but I think that brings us to the end of this week's episode of Champ Select. Do you have anything you want to add before we call it, Hugh?
No, I think I'm good.
Alrighty, well then I'd like to thank all of y'all for listening. If you aren't a member of our Discord, you definitely should be. There's a link in the description of whatever platform you're listening to this on. If you'd like to follow our Twitter, follow our Twitch, there's links to that in the description as well. And without further ado, we will see you all on the next episode of Champ Select. Bye-bye.